What if the man behind DC's brand new Superman film just crossed a line that no director ever should? James Gunn, the very filmmaker trusted to rebuild the DC universe, is now under fire for something shocking. In the Peacemaker finale, he delivered a scene that many say compared Jesus Christ to one of the darkest ideologies in human history. The backlash has been massive, and instead of apologizing, Gunn is reportedly lashing out, calling his critics names and dismissing their outrage. Now, Warner Brothers is stuck in the middle of a moral and PR disaster, and fans asking one question: how can someone shaping Superman's future show so little respect for the values he's supposed to stand for? Warner Brothers and DC are facing a serious James Gunn problem. The man behind the upcoming Superman film has landed himself in hot water after using the Peacemaker finale to make a deeply controversial statement, one that many Christians found deeply offensive. In the episode, Gunn drew a troubling connection between the villains of World War II and Jesus of Nazareth, sparking outrage across social media. Now, instead of taking accountability, he's reportedly lashing out, labeling anyone who calls him out with harsh, demeaning names. This has left Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav in a difficult position. What can be done about a director whose reckless comments and creative choices are now hurting the brand's image?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back.
It's always a pleasure to have you here as we break down what's happening in entertainment today. And let's be honest, James Gunn has quickly become a major headache for DC. When a game like Fortnite has to remove a dance from Peacemaker because it includes imagery linked to World War II, that's a sign things have gone too far. At this point, many fans are wondering, how can someone responsible for Superman and Batman, two of the most iconic heroes in pop culture, continue making decisions that damage the very legacy they represent? James Gunn's behavior is starting to look less like bold creativity and more like chaos. James Gunn's Peacemaker finale has once again landed him in controversy, this time for what many viewers see as a direct insult toward Christians. Critics, the episode went far beyond edgy humor, territory that felt blatantly disrespectful. In the show's final episode, characters Leota Adebayo and Judo Master discuss an alternate universe known as Earth X, a world where Germany won World War II and imposed its ideology across the planet. In this reality, minorities, members of the LGBTQ+ community, and people of faith face persecution. During their conversation, Judo Master warns, "You don't want to be a minority here, or gay, or Buddhist, or anything." Leota responds in disbelief with the phrase "Jesus Christ," used in a dismissive tone. What comes next is what truly shocked viewers: Judo Master's reply, "Oh, him they love." That single line sparked outrage. Many saw it as connecting Jesus, a figure associated with love, compassion, and truth, to the ideology of one of history's darkest regimes. For countless Christians, the implication was not only offensive but deeply hurtful. This controversy arrives just days after Gunn's GQ interview, in which he appeared to dismiss his critics as racists. Now, fans and commentators alike are questioning whether Gunn has lost touch with the values that franchises like Superman and Batman are meant to represent. To many, it's not just about a poor writing choice, it's about the message being sent under the DC brand. When the creative head behind some of the studio's biggest projects repeatedly stirs outrage, it raises serious questions about judgment, leadership, and respect for audiences worldwide. James Gunn, the director now leading DC Studios, has once again found himself at the center of controversy, this time for what many are calling an offensive and disrespectful jab at Christians in the Peacemaker finale. In the episode, characters Leota Adebayo and Judo Master discuss an alternate world known as Earth X, a dark universe where Germany won World War II and spread its ideology across the globe. In this reality, minorities, LGBTQ+ individuals, and people of faith face persecution. During the exchange, Adebayo reacts in disbelief, using Jesus Christ in a dismissive tone, prompting Judo Master to reply, "Oh, him they love." To countless viewers, that moment implied a connection between Jesus, a figure worshipped for love, sacrifice, and truth, and the villains of one of history's most evil regimes. The backlash was swift, with many calling it an outrageous and unacceptable portrayal. What's made matters worse is Gunn's public reaction. In an interview with GQ and later comments covered by /Film, Gunn brushed off his critics, claiming he doesn't want to pull any punches and is fine with being seen as polarizing, even suggesting that the racists can fall to the wayside. To many fans, this felt like an insult, equating sincere criticism of offensive storytelling with bigotry. And because Peacemaker is now canonically tied to upcoming films like Superman and Supergirl, viewers are deeply concerned about the tone and messaging of DC's future projects, especially those aimed at younger audiences. Critics argue that Gunn's behavior, from dismissing legitimate concerns to doubling down on controversy, has become destructive to the brand. Some have even joked about his eccentric appearance, calling him a white-haired gnome crossed with Colonel Sanders. But beneath the humor lies real frustration. The man entrusted with shaping the future of Superman and Batman seems more focused on provocation than inspiration. For many, this isn't simply about creative freedom, it's about responsibility. When storytelling crosses into territory that mocks faith and alienates millions, it risks turning heroes of hope into symbols of hostility. What James Gunn has done in this Peacemaker episode, critics argue, goes far beyond bad writing. It's a moral and cultural insult. By drawing a parallel between Jesus Christ and one of the most evil regimes in human history, Gunn didn't just make an artistic statement, he crossed an ethical line. While history has seen its share of monstrous figures, from Stalin to Pol Pot, the ideologies born out of World War II remain among the most universally condemned. So, to associate Jesus, a figure representing love, sacrifice, and redemption, with that darkness has left countless viewers stunned. It isn't merely offensive, it's unthinkable. And yet, when audiences express outrage, Gunn's response is to accuse them of prejudice, dismissing any objection as racist. To many, this isn't just arrogance, it's authoritarian in tone, dripping with contempt for anyone who dares to disagree. But this controversy isn't happening in a vacuum. To truly understand Gunn's pattern of behavior, one has to look back, and The Hollywood Reporter helps us do just that. In a 2023 article by Aaron Couch and Boris Kitt, the outlet revisited a key moment in Gunn's career. The time he was fired by Disney in 2018 after a series of disturbing old tweets resurfaced. Those posts, filled with inappropriate jokes and comments, nearly ended his Hollywood career. Back then, Gunn apologized, claiming that the remarks were relics of his past and didn't reflect the person he had become. Many, including his Guardians of the Galaxy castmates like Chris Pratt, rallied to his defense, helping him earn a second chance. Now, years later, some are questioning whether that forgiveness was misplaced. If this latest controversy is any indication, critics suggest Gunn hasn't evolved at all. He's simply found new ways to provoke outrage under the guise of creative freedom. To them, this isn't the work of a bold storyteller. It's the behavior of someone intoxicated by controversy, unable or unwilling to see the damage his words and choices cause. When James Gunn's career nearly collapsed back in 2018, after a series of offensive old tweets resurfaced, it was actor Chris Pratt who stepped in to help him rebuild. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Pratt was deeply moved during a church sermon that told the story of the Israelites circling the walls of Jericho, a message about perseverance and faith. As he listened, Pratt felt a moment of divine clarity. In his heart, he believed the story symbolized hope for Gunn, that despite his fall from grace, redemption was still possible. Just days earlier, Pratt had begun leading efforts among the Guardians of the Galaxy cast to write an open letter to Disney, urging the company to reinstate Gunn. He sought guidance from his future mother-in-law, Maria Shriver, while drafting the statement, ensuring that every cast member had input. According to Gunn's brother, Sean Gunn, Pratt was adamant that all of them stand united, because if even one actor refused to sign, that alone could become the headline. During this period, Pratt went a step further. He reached out to Gunn personally, sending him messages of encouragement drawn from scripture. One verse he shared, from the book of James, read, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." In those moments, Pratt wasn't just offering professional support, he was offering spiritual comfort. A Christian man was sending Bible verses to a fallen friend, choosing forgiveness and compassion over condemnation. And yet, years later, the irony couldn't be heavier. That same James Gunn, who once received grace from a believer, has now created a scene that many Christians view as an attack on their faith. To those who remember Pratt's kindness, this feels like a deep betrayal, a painful reminder that the man who once benefited from mercy may now be mocking the very source of it. When James Gunn faced cancellation back in 2018, it was Chris Pratt, a proud and outspoken Christian, who led the way in his redemption story. Pratt prayed for him, encouraged him, and publicly fought to have him reinstated at Disney. He sent Bible verses filled with messages of faith, perseverance, and forgiveness, believing that everyone deserves a second chance. And yet, years later, Gunn's response to that grace has been shocking to many. In Peacemaker, he delivered a scene that critics say compares Jesus Christ, the very figure of love and redemption, to one of the most evil ideologies in history. For countless Christians, including those who once stood by him, that moment felt like betrayal. Gunn's creative choice wasn't seen as clever or edgy, it was viewed as cruel, blasphemous, and morally corrupt. Now, Warner Bros. Finds itself in a difficult position. CEO David Zaslav must contend with a filmmaker whose words and actions are alienating a massive portion of the audience. This isn't just an ethical or spiritual issue, it's a business one. Offending an entire faith community risks long-term damage to DC's reputation, especially as Superman and Peacemaker currently dominate the studio's streaming lineup.
Many fear this success won't last.
Audiences may forgive creative missteps, but they rarely forget open contempt. If this continues, critics warn, the very foundation of the DC brand could crumble. And so, in response to Gunn's apparent disdain, one voice offers a quiet but powerful reminder, not of judgment, but of compassion. From the Gospel of John, chapter 5, verses 5-7, one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" It's a question that carries more than spiritual weight. It's a challenge. Because perhaps, beneath all the controversy, pride, and hostility, what James Gunn truly needs isn't more applause or defiance, it's healing. It's fascinating, in the Gospel of John, when Jesus encounters a man who has been ill for 38 years, he asks a question that, at first glance, seems almost unnecessary. Do you want to get well? You'd think the answer would be obvious. Of course someone who's sick wants to be healed, or so we assume.
But the truth is, not everyone does.
Some people grow attached to their condition, to their bitterness, to the identity that comes from being unwell. They reject the very thing that could set them free. And that, many argue, is what's happening with James Gunn. Years ago, when his career was on the brink, he was offered a second chance. A lifeline he did not earn but was given out of grace. Chris Pratt, through faith, forgiveness, and courage, fought to bring him back when the world had written him off. Pratt shared Bible verses, stood publicly by his side, and believed that redemption was possible. Without that act of compassion, Gunn's career would have ended in 2018. There would be no Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, no DC Studios, no Superman, Legacy. But somewhere along the way, it seems Gunn chose not to heal. Rather than grow from that mercy, he doubled down, using his platform to offend, provoke, and alienate. The very man who once received grace from a Christian now ridicules Christianity itself. It's as if he refuses to let go of the bitterness and rebellion that once nearly destroyed him.
Logic can't explain it. Morality can't excuse it.
For some, it's simply evidence of a deeper sickness, one of spirit, not skill. At this point, Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav may have no solution. You can't reason with someone who doesn't want to be well.
You can't reform a person who clings to chaos.
Like late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, whose divisive behavior has also drawn backlash, Gunn seems driven less by art and more by ideology, by a need to provoke rather than to uplift. And sadly, for both the man and the brand, that path only leads one way, toward collapse. And that's the heartbreaking part of this story. It didn't have to end this way. Many people, even those who once disagreed with James Gunn, genuinely wanted to see him succeed. When Warner Bros. Hired him, there was hope he might bring fresh life to the DC universe, that he'd honor its legacy of courage, hope, and moral clarity.
Instead, what we're seeing now is the opposite.
Gunn, once given grace and redemption, has chosen division over unity, outrage over inspiration. And in doing so, he's placing not just himself but the entire DC brand in jeopardy. Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav now faces a grim reality. There may be no good ending left in this story. The man entrusted to make Superman, the ultimate symbol of truth and goodness, has instead become a source of controversy and moral confusion. Gunn was hired to create heroes for children, to craft stories that lift people up. Yet his work has veered into territory that offends millions and fuels resentment. The moment art turns from inspiration to provocation, it stops serving its purpose. After incidents like the one involving Charlie Kirk and now Peacemaker, many fear Gunn's influence is doing something far worse than just hurting DC's image, it's feeding hostility. When a show implies that Christianity or Christ himself is somehow aligned with evil, it plants a dangerous idea. It grants permission to harm, as critics have said, a subtle, cultural message that believers are fair targets for ridicule or disdain.
That's not entertainment. That's damage disguised as art. And the saddest irony?
The very man who once received unconditional forgiveness from a Christian friend, Chris Pratt, now uses his platform to undermine the values that saved him. Pratt and others risked their reputations to defend Gunn when his career was all but buried. They offered him compassion, prayed for him, stood by him when few others would.
And how does Gunn repay that loyalty?
By turning his creative voice against the faith that gave him another chance. For Warner Brothers, this isn't just a PR headache, it's a moral reckoning. As long as Gunn remains in charge, the brand's message will be fractured, its audience divided. Untangling that could take years, bound by contracts and corporate politics. But one thing is clear. The real James Gunn, the one hidden behind charm and talent, has now revealed himself. And it's not the man Chris Pratt hoped he'd become. It's not the man fans believed deserved redemption. It's a man determined to prove that grace, when wasted, can turn into something far darker. This morning's discussion takes a serious turn, one that I honestly wish we didn't have to make. Yet sometimes, as uncomfortable as it may be, the truth demands to be spoken plainly. There are moments in entertainment when creative vision crosses a moral line, when leadership fails to recognize its responsibility, and when silence would be the same as complicity. That's what we're facing here. What we've witnessed from James Gunn isn't just another Hollywood controversy or fan outrage. This is something far more significant, one of the most poorly handled and ethically tone-deaf moments in recent franchise history. The remarks and creative decisions coming from him have crossed boundaries that should never have been touched, showing a level of disregard that's both deeply inappropriate and profoundly disappointing for fans who believed DC was entering a new era of integrity and inspiration. There's no easy way to say this. Gunn's recent actions and words don't just represent poor judgment, they undermine the very foundation of what franchises like Superman and Batman stand for. DC isn't just about comic book heroes. It's about moral courage, truth, and the hope that good can still triumph in a cynical world. And when someone in charge of that legacy uses their position to promote division, mock faith, or disrespect entire communities, it sends a message that runs completely counter to the values these characters represent.
Warner Brothers now stands at a crossroads.
The company must decide whether to quietly ignore this controversy, hoping it will fade with time, or take a stand that shows accountability still matters, that leadership and morality aren't negotiable when shaping the identity of one of the world's most beloved entertainment brands. It's a tough position for David Zaslav and the Warner Brothers leadership team. On one hand, James Gunn has creative talent. His ability to craft visually stunning, character-driven stories is undeniable. But talent alone cannot outweigh character, and vision cannot excuse arrogance. There's a reason audiences have always looked to Superman as a symbol of hope and moral clarity. These stories mean something. They carry weight, especially for children and families who invest their hearts in these heroes. When the person leading that creative direction chooses to alienate believers, make inflammatory comparisons, and disrespect fundamental values, the result isn't just a PR problem, it's a moral one. This situation is heartbreaking because many of us wanted Gunn's hiring to be a redemption story. We hoped it would prove that second chances can lead to something beautiful, that someone who once stumbled could rise above controversy and become a force for good. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is the opposite. Rather than using his platform to uplift, Gunn seems determined to provoke. Instead of healing divides, he's deepening them. And Warner Brothers, a studio with nearly a century of legacy, is now forced to carry the burden of his choices. If they don't act soon, they risk losing not just their credibility but the trust of the audience that once stood behind them. What's tragic is that this didn't have to happen. There was a path where DC could have emerged as the studio that finally recaptured the heart and optimism that superhero storytelling was built upon. Imagine a DC cinematic universe filled with hope, integrity, and purpose, where kids could look up to heroes again without being exposed to cynicism, bitterness, or mockery of faith. That was the vision so many fans dreamed of. But with every controversy, every statement, every insult disguised as edgy humor, that dream slipped further away. It's not too late for Warner Brothers to course correct, but it will require courage. True leadership means knowing when to say, enough. It means recognizing when someone's personal flaws and public controversies become too costly for the greater good. Gunn's creative spark cannot justify the damage his words have caused. If the studio truly cares about the moral integrity of its brand, if it truly wants to inspire the next generation, then it must begin the process of moving on from him, carefully, but decisively. Still, to everyone tuning in, Thank you for sticking with this important discussion. These conversations matter because culture matters. The stories we tell shape how we see ourselves and each other. So if you've made it this far, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a conversation like this one, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about this together, because accountability and dialogue are the first steps toward change. And as we wrap things up, let's shift gears to something a little lighter. The outro skit begins, offering a bit of comic relief after such a heavy topic. One character, with all the confidence in the world, believes he's discovered a new technique for uncovering corporate secrets, staring into a fishbowl and channeling his energy. His friend, bewildered but amused, watches for a moment before bursting out. "You're an idiot." He explains there's a far easier way to stay informed. Just visit thatparkplace.com or check out WDW Pro on YouTube, two places where real analysis and research actually happen. The spy, now realizing how ridiculous his plan was, drops his hands, sighs, and mutters, "Who would have thought?" as the outro music swells in the background. The humor lands, serving as a fitting reminder that even in moments of frustration or disappointment, laughter still has a place. It reminds us that while we must take issues seriously, we shouldn't lose sight of humility or hope. Because at the end of the day, that's what great storytelling and great fandom should always be about: truth, accountability, joy, and a shared belief that we can all learn, grow, and yes, still have fun along the way.